right here is literally one of my favorite shrimp. This is a Taiwan Bee Shrimp, the blue bolt, one of the most popular blue shrimp in the entire hobby. And today we're gonna dive into a complete guide on how you keep these guys along with other Taiwan bees. What is going on, shrimp keepers? This is Rob with flipaquatics.com, and today we are talking about one of my favorite shrimp of all time. It was the first shrimp I had in the 480 gallon, and I just absolutely love this shrimp. It is the blue bolt, but this can apply to all Taiwan bees, and we will even show you some of the other types of Taiwan bees. But last week, we talked about the guys on this side, the crystal reds, the tangerine tigers, the red fancy tigers, all the easy to keep Caridina shrimp. Now, these ones I wouldn't consider easy to keep, but they are very similar. So if you already have the right setup, you already have the right water, you can keep these without a problem. So we'll go into all the details, but these are one of my favorite shrimp of all time. So let's get right into today's video. Let's first start off with just defining what is a Taiwan bee. So a Taiwan bee is three types of shrimp. Those are the ones that are considered original Taiwan bees, and they're what we consider Taiwan bees in the hobby. That is a blue bolt, a red King Kong, and a black King Kong. So those are the only three that there can be. Now each category has its own grades. The first one I want to talk about is the red King Kong. Now, red King Kong and black King Kong, they can go hand in hand. They pretty much are graded exactly the same. So these guys look pretty close to crystal reds. Now we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but what is a red King Kong, or what qualifies as a red King Kong? So we're going to start with the ones that have the majority of white. So the ones that have more white usually are considered Misuras because they only have a little bit of red on their head and maybe a little bit on their tail. That is a red King Kong Misura. And then as you get more red into them, they become like a regular King Kong, which is like 1 to 2 stripes. They can be a Panda, which is 3 or 4 stripes. And then they can be an extreme red King Kong, which means that they are completely red. So there's a lot of different names for pretty much the same type of shrimp. It's all about patterns. And then black King Kong would be the exact same thing. So you have black King Kong Misura, you have black King Kong, you have black Pandas, and then you have extreme black King Kongs. Now, the thing with black King Kongs is you also have a blue genetic, and that's where it's either called a blue King Kong or a shadow King Kong. And all that means is that in the white pigmentation, you're gonna get a blue color. So we actually sell shadow pandas or blue pandas, which means it is a white and black shrimp, but in the white, you're gonna get really cool shades of blue. And it's actually really hard to find black King Kongs without the shadow or blue gene in them. It's just really hard to find. So if you find one, you get a good line, they could be worth a lot of money. But that is a lot of fun. Now, blue bolts, they are my absolute baby. I love these guys. So these guys are a lot of fun to grade. And basically there's only 3 ways to grade them. Now, when you're looking at them, most of them, we sell them like juvenile size. So they're pretty small. They're like 1/4 of an inch to, I mean, the absolute most is 1/2 inch. And these are all based on the amount of blue they have versus the amount of white they have. So if they just have blue in their head section and their tail is white, that is considered a regular grade. That is a standard blue bolt. Now, if you start getting blue into their tail pattern and moving down their tail towards the tip of their tail, that is considered a mostly blue or medium blue bolt. Now, if you get an extreme or deep blue bolt, that means that their whole body is solid blue. Now, the only genetic morph that I found in these guys is they do turn green. And my wife had some green blue bolts for a while, and they are absolutely stunning. She loved them. She got tons of likes on them. And usually it's a water parameter thing. Like you got to get the parameters just right to really get that color out. But these guys are just an amazing blue coloration. If you love blue, there's really very few shrimp that can compete with these guys. So absolutely love them. So that is grading these guys. And next we're going to talk about what is the difference between a red King Kong and a crystal red, or a black King Kong and a crystal black. So one thing I want to ask you guys, I'm really curious about this. How many of you watching this video right now have kept Taiwan bees before? Let me know in the comment section, and let me know what your experience was, because I want to know, like, hey, I kept these, they're actually really easy, they're a ton of fun, I love the color, or oh, I tried those, they were extremely hard, wouldn't recommend it. Let me know down below, because I really want to know how many people that are actually watching these videos are actually keeping these shrimp or have kept these shrimp before, or just learning for the first time. Crystal Reds, one of the most popular shrimp in the hobby. Everybody loves these guys. And the reason they love them is obviously because who doesn't like red and white in a plated aquarium? Like, it looks so good, it pops so good. So if you're debating between starting with Taiwan Bees, like a Red King Kong, versus these guys, I would say that this is the better choice to start with, just because they're a little bit hardier. They accept a little bit more neglect, a little bit more room for air. So these guys I would go with. But how do you know the difference? So you have a red and white shrimp and you have another red and white shrimp. So what is the biggest difference? There's two ways to tell. If I look at these guys, if you get one that doesn't have good quality as far as coloration goes, you can find ones that have a white color that is kind of translucent. And you can find ones that have like body red color. So like that is one way to tell, because Taiwan Bees will always have super solid colors. They're not splotchy. They are like bred into their tissue and their shell, and like they just always have extremely good colors. So that is one way to tell. Now it's not always foolproof, because again, these guys look really good. So you could get confused and think that like, oh, maybe it's a Taiwan Bee, maybe it's not. Like maybe this is a Missouri pattern. Now, another way to tell, and this is the one that has almost always proved me right, is on the nose of the shrimp. So it's like their rostrum is on the top, right underneath is like their tentacles coming out, and it's always a solid color at the base of their face. On Crystal Reds, it will always be white. It will be solid white. Now, there might be an exception if somebody really bred these guys for red coloration and they are like solid red with no white. There's a chance that they could breed them out with some red on their nose. So that is the only exception, and it goes the same way for Taiwan Bees. So like a Red King Kong might have white on its nose if they bred it to be like a Missouri pattern with like all white. So there's two extremes that it might be an exception, but for the vast majority, like every single one in here has a white nose. And then if I look at like this Red King Kong tank down here, every single nose is solid red. So that is the easiest way to tell if you can't tell based on color. And that is the biggest difference between Taiwan Bees and Crystal Reds, except for the water parameters, which we'll get to the water parameters right after we talk more about blue bolts. So just talking about telling the difference between one type of shrimp and another, there's only one thing that you have to watch for in blue bolts, and that is that they didn't slip in a Missouri. So like we talked about Black King Kongs, when you get just a little bit of black and mostly white in their body, that's considered a Black King Kong Missouri. And when you have that, and also they have the shadow gene, which makes them blue, people could try passing those off as blue bolts because there's not very much black. So in blue bolt tanks, if you ever see a black marking, it is a Black King Kong Missouri. Blue bolts will never have black on them. They will always be solid blue or have white mixed into them. So that is the only thing that you have to watch for when buying or getting blue bolts for your aquarium. So just talking about water parameters, I did a very in-depth water parameters last week, talking about Crystal Reds and easy to keep Caridina shrimp, and most of that stuff still applies. So for your typical Caridina shrimp, your easy to keep ones, you're gonna go for like a TDS of 150, which with our remineralizer, the Shrimple GH+, that's gonna give you a GH of like, I would say 5 to 8, just depending. Usually we're aiming for like the 6 to 7. Now Taiwan Bees, on the other hand, they like their water much softer. So what we do is we use the Shrimple GH+, we remineralize to 100 TDS. So these guys are 150, these guys are 100. Now they like softer water for whatever reason, due to their genetics, how they're bred. They like softer water, so we keep them in 100 TDS. Now, is that perfect? No, you could do, 90 would probably be okay. If anything, I would favor more on the harder side. So like 120, 125. And usually that gives you a GH of like 4. So GH of 4 is usually what you're aiming for. 3 would be okay, 5 would be okay, but really aim in for that 4. And these guys, they need this same setup that all Taiwan Bees need or all Caridina need. They're gonna need the active substrate. They're gonna need a sponge filter. We like matin filters here at flipaquatics, just because it provides so much more beneficial bacteria, beneficial, microorganisms for them to graze on, so on and so forth. So I like the matin filters. You're gonna need water that is RO water or distilled water, like we just talked about. You gotta get into that 100 TDS using the Shrimple GH+, or any other type of mineralizer that you wanna use. Just make sure it doesn't have KH in it, because what this substrate does lowers the pH in the aquarium by pulling the KH out of the water. And so if you're adding KH into your tank or have water that has KH in it, what it's going to do is create huge fluctuations in the pH, going to stress out your shrimp, going to cause early molts, going to cause deaths. Not good. You don't want to do it. So no KH in your water. And then I personally always like keeping the plant in there. This tank has Sawasser tang, but any type of moss would do. Java moss, Taiwan moss, weeping moss, willow moss, you name it, probably would do just fine with your shrimp. And then as far as temperature goes, these guys are kept in the basement, 68 to 72 all year around. If anything, favor on the cooler side for Caridina shrimp. So really 70 degrees and cooler is better, only because they are a little bit more susceptible to bacterial infections. And I think that's initially why they were bred in a lower pH, is to get them to be away from the bacterial infections, or at least the risk of them, because a lower pH, less bacteria thrives there, which makes it easier to keep them alive. And so that is a little overview of parameters. Feel free to drop a comment down below if you have any questions. If I missed anything, would love to answer that. I know Em is always in there responding to people. So drop your questions down below and let's keep going with the video. So one thing with Taiwan bees, or Caridina shrimp in general, they're a little bit more expensive. They require a little bit more of a expensive setup compared to like Neocaridina. So I tend to feed them more premium food. So first of all, my favorite food all time, BacterAE. Absolutely love this stuff. Highly recommend it. Been using it for 10 plus years. Like, this stuff is just great. You can't go wrong with it. Just don't overfeed it, because it can use up the available oxygen in the water, suffocate your shrimp. You don't want to do that. Don't follow the label. Just feed a little bit, kind of gauge how much they eat and go from there. The next thing is you want like a complete food. We choose to use Shrimp Envy. I love Rob and Ree over at Shrimp Envy. So I always use this because I just like supporting them. They're a USA-based company. They have a good product. So definitely would check that out. We use the complete, I think the Shell Envy, and then the protein one. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but the main one we use is obviously the complete Envy. We got a huge bag of it. So that's what I'd recommend. But if you guys are feeding something at your home already, don't go out there and just buy a bunch of food because I said it. Really weigh, like, are my shrimp doing good with this food? Are they not? Are they having issues? Are they not? And this is just what we use. So if you get shrimp from us, they'll already be adjusted to this type of food. So you could just jump right in there and start feeding. So two things with these guys. One, if you want to keep some fish with them, you definitely can, or just Tankmates in general. Snails, always a great option. The only thing is acidic water is going to eat away at the snail shell. So like long term, no snail is really going to thrive in a low pH. If you get something that repopulates quickly, then they can kind of, you know, grow fast enough that they really won't have issues. But like mystery snails might be okay. Bladder snails are always okay. Ramshorn snails probably okay. But like I wouldn't do anything of the more expensive stuff. Like nearite snails probably wouldn't. Rabbit snails probably wouldn't, things like that. But you could keep some fish in here, like microasboras and things like that, that like the softer water. You can't keep guppies or endlers because they don't like that acidic water. They wouldn't thrive. But if you really want to breed these guys, not a good idea to keep other tank mates with them, just because, like, you know, they're going to most likely eat the babies if they see a baby. You know, I always say, see a baby, eat a baby. That's what fish do in a shrimp tank. And so I personally wouldn't keep anything with them unless it was like, you know, a soft water fish and I wasn't trying to breed them. Smaller fishes, Otocinclus would probably be okay, something like that. So there's some rare exceptions where you could probably get away with it. But if you are trying to breed these, you're going to need to know, what is the difference between a male and a female? Now, when they're young like this, it's really hard to tell. There's two ways to tell for sure. And the one way, I'm not even sure how to do it. Like, you really have to define a skill on it. And it's something with the antennas, like how they point. If they point up or to the side, you can tell whether they're male or female. I don't need to sex them for any reason. I'm not trying to breed them. We do have some that breed naturally, but we're really not trying to turn it into a business of breeding for profit. So therefore, I don't really get too deep into it. So you can look that method up if you want to do more research on it and figure it out. But the easiest way to tell on these guys is males will always have the bottom of their tail. So like, let's say this is the top of their tail. The bottom of their tail is always going to be a straight line, no curvature whatsoever. The females will always have like a half moon belly. And the reason for that is when they get into breeding season, they're going to molt, they're going to breed, the eggs are going to drop down to their tail, and then the eggs are going to be on their swimmerettes underneath their tail. So the sides come down in like a reverse moon for the simple fact that shields the eggs from predators. So like it protects the eggs. So you can always tell females based on that rounded belly, bottom of the tail, whatever you want to call it. And that is the easiest way to sex them. Now, another trick that you could use, if you take these guys out, you put them into like a dip and pour or a catch cup, or even just like a glass container that's clean. You don't want to use one they use for dishes because it might have residue on it. But you put them in like a see-through container and you shine a light up from the bottom and you look down at them, you should be able to see what we call a saddle, which is the eggs moving from their head to their tail. And it looks like a horse saddle. So that is one way to really tell. Males will obviously never have a saddle. Females will almost always have a saddle once they're mature enough to start breeding. So usually that's around like 4 to 6 months-ish. And those are the ways that you can sex them. Now, as far as actually breeding these guys, literally you provide the setup, you give them the correct parameters, and these guys are gonna reward you with babies. If you guys are still here and you enjoy this type of content, you wanna do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, sign up for notifications. It doesn't cost anything, so don't think that like, you know, you're signing your life away when you hit that button. But we do want you to be a part of our journey. We are gonna have way more videos. We do these videos every single Saturday, so we don't want you to miss out on them. And we just really appreciate you being here. Again, drop down in that comment section. Let us know that you're here. Let us know that you made it this far in the video. We definitely want to hear from you guys. And we hope that you enjoyed this little overview of Taiwan bees, specifically my babies, the blue bulls. Gotta love them. And I just hope you guys at least learned something. So make it a great week, everybody. As always, God bless. We'll catch you on the flip side. Hello there. No. Just start over. Where we go? Right underneath is like their tentacles coming out. Maybe not.